Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Mega Man 10, brought to us by Capcom. After the success of Mega Man 9, Capcom decided to try one more time at going back to the 8-bit style and do another classic Mega Man game. In Mega Man 10, the gameplay remained relatively the same. We still didn't have the charged up ability or the slide, however they did add Proto Man as a playable character right at the start, instead of having him be DLC later. They also added another DLC character in base. One of the other interesting features that's added to Mega Man 10 over 9 is the ability to have an easy mode. Now I always think Capcom was kind of laughing a little bit when so many people complained that the difficulty in Mega Man 9 was too steep. But Capcom also counteracted that by adding a hard mode as well, which ups the gameplay quite a bit. Now during this run of the game, I'll be defeating all the Robot Masters once again with just the Mega Buster, but then when we rematch against them, I'll be using their weaknesses. I'll also be playing on the normal difficulty and playing as Mega Man. While the game was released on Xbox Live Arcade, the PlayStation Network, and Nintendo WiiWare, I'll be playing the Nintendo Wii version of the game. So here we go with Mega Man 10 for the Nintendo Wii. So Mega Man and Proto Man are teaming up in order to take out some robots who've been infected by a disease called Robo-Enza. Even Dr. Wily's been affected, and he's trying to create a cure along with Dr. Light. There's a pretty good amount of options that you can deal with at the very beginning, including time attack, the challenges return, and you can also look at your rankings to see how you rank up against other people in the world. Once you start your game though, you pick either Mega Man or Proto Man, and then you get to select your difficulty. As you can tell on the easy mode, there's a lot of extra panels laying around to really help you out. At the Robot Master selection screen, you can see it's pretty similar to Mega Man 9 and also some of the earlier Mega Man titles, having Mega Man's face in the center and having his eyes follow as you pick around and select your Robot Master you want to do battle with. The first one that we're going to fight is Sheep Man. Probably one of the more obscure ones that's added to this game. He's actually the electric-based robot. I'm sure by now most of you know the inspiration for Sheep Man was the science fiction novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? This was written by Philip K. Dick. The multicolored panels that you can see in this area of the stage light up when you stand on them, and after a few seconds they disappear. You'll have to jump on the right ones when you want to in order to actually be able to get over the gaps, as well as collect a few items along your way. The giant and small screws return that we saw in Mega Man 8 originally, and allow you to purchase items just like we did in Mega Man 9 by going to the shop. As we drop down here, choose the left side so that you can easily jump on the red blocks and you don't end up getting stuck next to the spike wall on the right side. Here's our first mini-boss of the game. This giant light bulb can be a little bit bothersome. One of the easy ways to contend with him, though, is start running on the track to cause the electricity, and then take out just one of the light bulbs that's floating around trying to hit you. He can't spawn any more light bulbs if he still has one out, so use that to your advantage and outrun the other light bulb, get the platforms to appear, and then jump up and blast away at the center. There's a few of these tracks that you have to run across, including here. Be careful to fully charge it up before you attempt to make your jumps over it. You don't want the panel to run out of energy before you're able to make it across the gap. Here, take out the enemy first on the far left side, either before or after he enters his cannon, then run along the track and make a very quick run in order to get up high enough so you can get to the platform and then up to the top. My least favorite object of any Mega Man title is once again present in Mega Man 10, and that's the disappearing reappearing blocks. Thankfully though, they're extremely easy to deal with during this game. As you can see, there was only a couple in that first room, and there's only a little bit of spikes that could have killed us in that room as well. Here's the large, harder part, but there's actually no real blocks that are going to try to trick you. So just easily follow the path that you need to in order to make your way across the gaps and over the spikes. On the far right side, take out the mouse clicker enemy, and then wait for the blocks to appear below so you can actually get down without accidentally falling too far and into that spike below. Here, if you move across the blocks correctly, you can net yourself a very valuable weapon tank. Now these will completely replenish one of your weapons that you get completely back up to full. Down here, be very careful not to land on the spikes as you get the blocks to disappear so you can fall down to the next room. Get past two more of the mouse clickers and it's time for the Robot Master battle against Sheep Man. While Sheep Man isn't too difficult, he can do a lot of damage to you if you're not careful. Start off by firing at him and jump over his projectile when he fires it at you. The projectile that he shoots has two different forms, one slower and one a little bit faster. Just try to do your best to jump over it and get out of the way if he's trying to jump towards you. After that, he jumps into the air, spawning into 4 different clouds. He officially is only in the 4th cloud, the one that moves last, and that's the one he drops from. Also, all the lightning bolts that come down, the 4th one will cause a shock to go across the ground, as well as just the normal lightning, so you'll have to be ready to jump over it. Try to do your best to get to an open area of the field when he does the cloud lightning bolts, so that you can try to do your best to jump over the lightning or avoid it altogether. As you can tell, it can be a little bit hard to predict exactly which one of the projectiles that Sheep Man is going to shoot out sometimes, causing you to accidentally jump into it when you want it to just stay on the ground and let it go over your head. Once you're able to drain his health, though, we get our first ability, the Thunder Wool, and we move on to the next Robot Master. The second Robot Master we're going to be battling in Mega Man 10 is Pump Man, the water-based Robot Master for Mega Man 10. His level is a sewer-themed stage, and you start off by dropping down. It doesn't really matter, but if you want some screws, you can drop down on the right side and land on the platforms for a couple of little screws. Then, take out the spider on the ceiling and continue forward. There's going to be these robots throughout the stage that plug up the pipes that you have to take out before you can then go through the gaps in the pipes, but if you're quick enough on the first one, you can actually get past them before they're actually able to set. The shrimp enemies here can be a little bit annoying because their pattern's a little hard to judge, so definitely take them out before attempting to jump over any of the pits. The same goes for the Matools here. The Matools in this stage actually can't hurt you with their projectile, but instead it sticks to your foot and causes a very slippery movement every time you try the move, so jumping can become very treacherous. Also, the waterfalls in this stage cause pressure on your head, so it slows down your jumps and doesn't allow you to jump as far, so you have to be very careful and get really close to the edge of a platform before attempting to make a jump that involves a waterfall. In the next room, take out the pipe-blocking robots from the ladder before attempting to climb up it, because they can get in your way and cause their projectiles to hit you off the ladder and back down below. As you can see, unless you perfectly time your jump with the waterfall here, you may end up falling down to the screen below. You can jump up to the top if you want to grab yourself one of the large screws. If not, continue moving along the bottom. Watch out for the spider robots, as if they're overhead, they're going to try to drop directly on you and then jump all around. Probably my least favorite enemy in this game, as well as my least favorite from Mega Man 9. One of my only real complaints about the game is that they added a new feature, allowing you to switch through your weapons easier, similar to what you would do with the L and R buttons in the Mega Man games for the Super Nintendo. However, they ended up adding it to the A button on the Wiimote as well as the B button on the back, and you can end up accidentally changing your weapons when you don't want to by trying to press one of the other buttons. While this isn't much of a problem on the other systems, it's definitely a problem on the Wii version of the game. After a few more spider robots, we drop down into the lair of Pump Man. Pump Man is our rotating shield robot master as well for this game, having a shield of bubbles that surrounds him as he jumps around. You can't hurt him at all while he has the bubbles around him, so you have to wait for him to jump around and throw them off of him so that you can end up actually doing damage. He'll jump 1, 2, or even 3 times sometimes before end up releasing the shield, so you may not be sure exactly when he's going to be doing the attack to you. There's a few great places to stand, either very far away from him when he's doing the shield blast, or if you stand directly underneath of him on his far foot, whatever foot is farther from you when he jumps up into the air, you should be able to actually sneak in between 2 of the bubble shots. The timing on that can be a little bit tricky, and overall sometimes dodging these bubbles can be a little bit troublesome because you're going to be focusing more on trying to attack him than actually dodging his bubbles. Since Pump Man blocks most of your shots with his shield, it'll be a relatively long battle, especially if you're just using the Mega Buster. But once you're able to take him out, we get his Bubble Shield ability and we can move on to the next Robot Master. We just got done fighting the water-based Robot Master, so now it's time to move on to the fire-based Robot Master, and this is Solar Man. One of my absolute favorite songs from this game is definitely this level's theme. There's quite a few hazards during this stage. One is the solar lamps that fire out a blast and you have to wait for them to open up to attack them. These different projectile shooters that shoot out these red flames. They shoot out 4 red flames that do an arcing pattern and go back and forth between 2 of them. So you have to time your jumps and movements correctly so you can get across without accidentally getting hit or run into by them. And we'll be seeing a lot of them through the stage. The next mini-boss that we have to deal with is probably my favorite, these 2 flame birds, an orange one and a purple one. The one on the bottom won't attack you, however the one above you will shoot out 3 flames that will land on the ground. Don't worry about the one in the air and just get in between its flames when it throws them out. When you take out one, however, the one that remains will continue to throw out the flames whether he's in the air or on the bottom area. So you'll have to wait a few seconds sometimes for him to actually come down so you can continue hitting him. Once he's been defeated, you've reached the halfway point of this stage. Climb up here and use the conveyor belts quickly enough, and if you're fast enough, you can actually get up the ladder before the flames can come back out for a second go. This room has a lot of conveyor belts along with those arcing flame shots, so you have to time your movements correctly in order to get past without accidentally running into one of those flames. They don't do a ton of damage, but you want to have as much health as you possibly can before we end up facing off with Solar Man. After climbing up this ladder, you can actually get a giant health replenishment and item replenishment by using the rush coil on the far left side. Then, start climbing up either the left or right ladder. I usually prefer the left one as I seemingly have a little bit easier time getting past the arcing flames. When you get up here, take out the lamp first before climbing up the ladder. It ends up being a lot easier. If you need an energy tank, you can climb up the far left ladder where that lamp was, and you can climb all the way up in order to net yourself the energy tank, or if you've already fought Commando Man, you can use his ability to blow up the wall and grab the energy tank that way. Up here, you have a couple more lamps and one more thing of arcing flames before you reach the door for Solar Man. Solar Man is one of the toughest robot masters to deal with in the game because he can deal a ton of damage with his projectile and running into you. Solar Man can jump all the way from the far left to the far right side of the screen. Depending upon how far he jumps will determine how many shots he throws out. If he only jumps over 1, he won't fire. Going over 2 will give you 1, and then 3 panels will launch out 2. Staying on the middle platform is probably the best strategy in order to keep hitting him, being able to easily jump over his flames and deal a decent amount of damage. The only time where you'll have to move off the middle platform is of course when he jumps to it himself. Because when he does, even if you're standing right next to him, he moves his head slightly down to the left or right, and it'll end up running into you. This can be an extremely tricky battle, especially with just the Mega Buster, because as you can see, his flames deal a lot of damage to you. Once you're able to finally take him out though, we've completed 3 Robot Masters and we move on to the 4th. Our next Robot Master is the Ice Master for this game, and he is Chill Man. Of course, being a snow level, most of the platforms throughout the whole stage are going to be very slippery when you're trying to walk on them. These snowball throwing enemies can be a little bit of a problem because they throw a snowball that ends up breaking apart into a shot that goes multiple directions. One of the main things about the stage, though, is these giant ice cubes. When you land on them, they crack, and if you jump on them a second time, they end up breaking completely. You can also break them by shooting them. You'll have to be very careful when using these platforms in order to maneuver yourself around, so you can end up making it over pits and not end up falling into spikes. When you get to this area, take the upper path, as it's a lot easier to deal with the enemies. You can do so by using the rush coil on the ice blocks themselves. Also, by going this way, you'll end up climbing up this ladder and grab yourself one of the weapon tanks. Work your way through the blocks and past the enemies and continue moving yourself upwards. Try to do your best to take out the iRobots before they end up running into you when they dash across the screen. I also recommend taking out the shield enemy before you attempt to go on the top platform. When you get here, don't destroy this block. Instead, just stand underneath of it, and this will easily allow you to take out the giant robot before it's able to end up crushing you and end up hurting you a lot. After that, you climb up here and you have robot birds that are going to shoot missiles at you. As well, you have these little bouncing robots that can break the ice cubes before you end up jumping on them. These guys can be a little bit annoying, but I usually like to take them out before they end up breaking too many of the blocks, and then just either jump on or very quickly run across the platforms they ended up cracking. Drop down into this cove and get yourself some health back, then stand in it and wait for the giant robot to come over to you and take him out, or wait till he breaks the block and he ends up falling through. Then jump on the other block to get over the platform and get into the boss room. Chill Man can be a bit of a pain, especially considering his floor is made of ice, so moving around can be really hard during this stage. He throws down ice spikes that stay on the ground until you walk into them to do damage, as well as if he hits you directly, he ends up freezing you. He also runs back and forth through his stage and likes to jump. For the most part though, his jumps end up being rather short sometimes, so it's best usually not to even try to run underneath of him. Instead, try to stay on the opposite side of the screen and wait for him to run at you, and then jump over him if he starts running towards you. When he does shoot out ice, he likes to do it in twos, so the first one will usually go towards the ground while the other one will go towards the ceiling. So step far away from the bottom one and just let the other one go overhead. Once we're able to drain his health down though, we get his ability and we move on to the 5th Robot Master. After that cutscene, we have the halfway point of our game, as we now pick our next Robot Master. Of the final 4, we're going to start with Nitro Man. Now we also got ourselves the Rush Jet from the previous stage, which will help us out at a few points in the game. Nitro Man's level is a weird city-themed level with lots of traffic that's going around. The first few enemies I usually like to just jump over them, because if you destroy the bottom part, it ends up shooting the cannon up into the air that can fire at you, as well as if you destroy the top part, the car will still continue moving towards you. When you make it up here, here's the first time we have to deal with traffic. The red blocks below will light up green with arrows pointing in the direction that the traffic's coming right before it ends up getting to you. The traffic is these large trucks that you can jump on top of in order to avoid. However, if they run into you, they can deal a lot of damage, and if you're not careful, your timing will be thrown off, and they'll just keep running into you repeatedly, doing a lot of damage. The first traffic was coming towards us, but the second traffic will come actually behind us. So jump on top of the truck and ride it all the way across the area. Just be sure to be ready to jump on the ladder or jump off of it before you end up running headfirst into the spikes. The next set has traffic coming towards us again, as well as it has a different type of truck, where you'll have to jump on the front of it and then be able to jump up to the top of it. You also have to be very quick about it, because you don't want to accidentally jump up and land in any of the spikes. There's also a few flying matools that can try to get into your way as well. At the end, drop down to the hole and get to the next area. Here, watch out for the matool's fire and take it out before dropping down. Then, jump on one of the fronts of the trucks as it rides all the way across. Thankfully, you don't even have to jump off of it until the very end, because none of the spikes are low enough until the very end to actually hit you. Here, take out the bomb and then drop below. If you need some screws, you can grab some big screws on the far right by blowing up the bombs in the right order. We can also do that here in order to net ourselves a large health replenishment. And you can get yourself a weapon tank if you want one in the lower left corner by doing the same thing. On the final area of the stage, just be careful of the vehicles. I usually prefer, once again, to just jump over them to avoid them. At the end, take out the Sniper Joe and enter the Robot Master Chamber. Nitro Man is part motorcycle, and because of this, he can ride easily across the ground. He also throws gears at you in order to do damage. When he's riding across the ground, though, just jump over him and deliver shots with your Mega Buster to do a pretty good amount of damage to him. When he jumps into the air, be prepared to watch out for the two gears that are going to then bounce across the floor, and then cross at the middle. At some points, though, he'll also throw out regular gears while standing on the ground, and because of this, they can be a real hassle of trying to dodge all the gears that are flying around, and this is where the battle becomes tricky. Just try not to let Nitro Man run into you directly for a lot of damage, and just keep jumping over him and delivering shots when you have the opportunity, and you should be able to drain his health. Once he's taken care of, we've defeated 5 Robot Masters, and we have only 3 more to go. Commando Man stage takes place in the desert, so the whole stage is going to be filled with sand for us to jump through. Of course, standing directly in it will cause you to sink, so you have to be careful and keep jumping through. You'll be seeing these landmines laying in the ground along the sand. Take out the helicopters as soon as they appear above head before they end up dropping a missile and cause the bomb to go off in the sand, allowing for a pit to appear. Inside the pit will be one of those monsters that you just saw at the top of the sand there, so you'll have to deal with that along with the pit. The tricky part about this stage is in these areas like here. You have a large wave of sand, this time coming from behind you, that's going to push you forward if you're not careful. So you have to time your jumps accordingly and be in a safe spot for when the sand ends up coming through. Wait for the first one to dissipate before you start jumping over the pits. Also be very careful that most of the pits throughout the stage are going to have those robots that fly out of the pit, and if you end up jumping over the pit while they come up, you'll end up getting hit and dropped right down into the hole. Down here, stand on the far left side and shoot the mine that's right on top. Doing so will give you 3 giant screws. Once again in this area, just be sure to take out the helicopters before they end up dropping the missiles on the ground that end up blowing up the little mines. After a big giant robot, you'll then move on to another area with the sand coming towards you. Just be very careful and jump over the pit after taking out the robot, and then when you're standing on a platform, just keep moving slightly forward every second, so you don't end up getting knocked back all the way into the spikes. Here, take out the robot in the middle, and then grab yourself a couple of those little item health replenishments. Here we have another one of those sands that's actually from behind us trying to push us forward. So just stand on the platform right next to the top platform so that when the sand comes, it ends up just pushing you into that wall. Quickly make your way over to here, and then wait a few seconds for the sand to start coming at you. You have to jump with the sand, or you could of course use your rust jet if you would like. Then watch out for another giant robot before entering the boss room with Commando Man. Commando Man is a heavy robot, so when he jumps up into the air and does a big thud on the ground, it ends up shaking the ground, freezing you for a second or two, allowing him to hit you with his missile projectile. Try to do your best to run underneath of him when he jumps high into the air, trying to get past the missile before it shoots, as well as be able to get behind him so you can deliver a couple of shots when he lands. If he fires a missile directly at you, just be far enough away from the left or right wall so that when it breaks apart and blasts, it doesn't end up hitting you that way. Commando Man can deal a pretty good amount of damage, but the fact that he's a little bit slow will definitely help you get a lot of shots in quickly. Once you're able to take him out though, we have only 2 Robot Masters left. Next up, we're going to be traveling to Blade Man's level. Now his theme is a castle-themed level that we have to travel through. Watch out for these axe enemies throughout the stage. Every time they go in the air, they move one of their body length over before dropping back down to the ground. When they do drop though, just be a little bit far away from them so you can end up hitting them. My favorite enemies, the spider enemies, make their return in this stage as well, and they can be a real annoyance, especially here. Try to bait them into falling before you end up jumping to the platform where they're located. Sometimes though, you may just have to jump to the platform itself and deal with them as soon as they end up falling down. Here we see some scale vehicles. We'll see a few of these throughout this level, and what they do is when you jump on the side that's raised up, it'll cause it to press down, moving the vehicle forward. So you'll have to keep jumping back and forth between the left and right sides to get it across the gaps. For the most part though, it's pretty easy to control, and you shouldn't have too much trouble while making it over. Just take out the enemies while you're moving across. This giant castle enemy can be a huge pain trying to hit all 3 sets of eyeballs. Usually I like to take out the middle one using my projectile shot of just the Mega Buster, but then I switch over to Pump Man's ability in order to blast it with my bubble shield to do a lot of damage to it very quickly, destroying the eyeball pretty fast. While of course you can jump onto the platforms it shoots out, I end up finding the bubble shield the easiest way just to get past that thing. After you defeat it, the white flag raises and it ends up crumbling before you can move on. If you end up getting a lot of damage dealt to you from either the spider or the axes during this area, just try to go past it as quick as possible. If they end up hitting you a few times, just ignore them and keep moving on. Here we have another one of the scale vehicles to ride across the spikes. Be careful of the little cannons that use their propellers to fly up and down, doing a couple of shots here and there. Sometimes, though, they end up respawning based on the way you have to keep jumping back and forth between the scales, so just be very careful while doing so, and don't try to make a jump over the spikes without landing solidly on one of the scales themselves. Up here, you can use Commando Man's bomb ability in order to blow up the walls and grab yourself another weapon tank, as well as a few extra little things of health. Here we have to be careful riding the scale that we don't jump too high up into the air while we're moving across so that we don't end up hitting the spikes on the ceiling. At the end of this area, grab yourself a giant health replenishment, and then jump up and enter the boss chamber. Thankfully though, even if you have a lot of damage dealt to you already, Blade Man is one of the easier patterns to deal with. Blade Man jumps backwards at the start of the battle, landing on the wall and then firing a projectile shot of 3 of his blades. If you're far enough away, you can actually easily slide in between 2 of the blades, either by jumping up or staying on the ground. He then continues to move across to different areas of the screen, throwing out more blades. The farther you're away from him, the easier it is to get in between the blades, or, when he's on the wall, just move towards him, and you'll end up going right underneath the blades as he throws them out. If you keep moving back and forth effectively enough, you'll get him to get stuck into a pattern, allowing you to keep delivering shots while easily dodging his blades every time. After moving back and forth quite a few times during this boss battle, you'll defeat Blade Man and be able to move on to the final Robot Master. The final Robot Master for us to face in Mega Man 10 is Strike Man, who's probably my personal favorite Robot Master from the game, being that he's actually a baseball Robot Master, and his stage is a sports-themed level. Just for the heck of it, I'm going to get out Blade Man's ability and use that for a lot of the stages. It's probably the most effective weapon in the whole game, as it can pretty much kill most of the enemies rather quickly. When we drop down here, we have the first of 2 mini-bosses in this level. It's the same one both times, but they're a little bit different. What you have to do in order to hurt it is wait for one of the balls to fly out, dodge that soccer ball, or destroy it with your shield, and then ride up one of the 2 fists that come out and able to hit the head in the center. For a very quick and easy battle, just get out Pump Man's shield and use that to easily take out the head in the center. The container robots that shoot out the different types of balls are pretty easy to deal with. It only takes a few shots to hit them, and if you stand directly next to one of them, the balls they throw out will end up going directly over your head and past you. Drop down here and grab the items in the right corner, and then use Rush Coil in order to get back up. These giant soccer balls blast up into the air when you actually fire a shot directly at them. You'll have to use these in order to make your way up a few of the platforms. Up here, take out the holder robot before you start moving your way over to the right. Keep firing at all those soccer balls, and they'll go right overhead and you'll be able to run underneath of them. When you get down here, shoot a couple more of them, and then drop down into the opening to fight off with another one of those goalie robots. Just like before, we're going to use the shield in order to get ourselves upwards and do a lot of damage to the robot easily. After he's taken care of, continue over to the right. Anytime you see these giant amounts of lockers in the background, a robot could pop out of them. They come out randomly, so you're not sure exactly when which ones are going to come out and attack you. Up here, take out the robot in the center if you like, or try to ignore him and just dodge the balls that he throws out and grab yourself a giant health replenishment in the upper right corner. If you're low on health or you need item replenishment at this point in the stage, fighting the lockers over and over again is a great way in order to grab some extra items, as they seem to drop them pretty often. Over here, ignore the screws if you like in the upper left corner, and then just run across the bottom shooting the soccer balls. Stand on the far right side and keep jumping up and fire at the holder before you make your way up and enter the boss chamber. With Strike Man, he has the main ability of a rebound ball he throws out. He'll either throw it straight at you from standing on the ground, or he'll jump up into the air and throw it. When it bounces off of anything, it usually homes in directly on where you're standing, so you'll have to keep moving around. Every time it hits the ceiling, it's coming directly at you, so be prepared. He also has two different types of bounces that he does himself. When he turns into a ball, he'll either do two straight bounces, one small and then a higher one up into the air, or he'll do a real high one and then a smaller one that sends him flying towards you, depending upon what wall you're standing near. Focus mainly on the rebound ball itself and just keep trying to get out of the way the best you can. Thankfully, you can drain his health rather quickly by keep delivering shot after shot. Once he's taken care of though, we've defeated all 8 Robot Masters. So once again, it's not really a shock that Dr. Wily was behind all of this to begin with, and we have to now travel to Dr. Wily's castle and try to take him out once again. At the beginning of the first Wily stage, there's going to be one of those big stomping robots, so be careful and move slowly and be ready to run underneath of him when he jumps over you. After a missile launcher, there's going to be another one, followed by another missile launcher before you come to a boss door. Now here's probably one of the coolest bosses in Mega Man. You have to deal with these little robots that are going to come out of these tubes in the middle. However, each one has a different ability from a past robot master. You have Woodman, Gemini Man, and Elect Man to deal with first. Gemini Man comes straight down in the center and shoots out a beam bouncing around the room. Jump over the robot so you can try to avoid it the best you can and keep launching in hits. Thankfully, it doesn't take too many hits to destroy each robot. Elect Man will stay on the far opposite side of you and fire out electrical beams. Jump over them and keep blasting it to destroy that one. For Woodman, of course, you want to jump over the shield and then jump in between the leaves as they come down in order to get the shots in on him. Afterwards, you can fall down and choose a couple of different paths. You can choose the right path, which will have an explosive mine in order to take you that way, or you can go in the open area to the left. On the next screen, though, there's also going to be another mine you can take for another path, or you can drop down a long spike corridor. For this run, I'm going to be taking the right mine path. Watch out for a few of those ball launchers that we saw in Strike Man stage, and watch out for the spike wall on the left there. The next room has a corridor filled with a few of those spider robots that I really do not like. When you drop down, take out another one of the purple ball launchers, then walk over to the right, and then jump up and activate the bomb, but be sure not to accidentally fall into the spikes. Next up, you have another set of the 3 robots that have past robot powers. For this set, we have to deal with Napalm Man, Flame Man, and Ring Man. Wherever Napalm Man is, he's going to jump in the air and fire 2 of his bombs at you, run underneath of him and get to the opposite side of him, turn around and start firing. Just keep going back and forth left and right in order to keep hitting him and dodge his ability. Flame Man shoots out 4 straight little flames that can be a little bit tricky because they move slowly, but then he has flames that rise up from the ground, which can be quite annoying. Ring Man shoots out a ring that will retract to him after a few seconds, so be sure to jump up and jump out of the way of that one. He then goes up in the air and tries to repeat the process in the air, however, being up in the air, he won't be actually able to hit you with the ring. He'll then go to the opposite side of the room and do the same thing. In the next set of corridors, watch out for the mouse click enemies that we saw back in Sheepman's level. Over here, hit the bomb, then jump back to the left to avoid it as it explodes. If you need some health, fall down on the right side and work your way over on the bombs so that you can end up getting the large amount of health in the lower left corner. Here we have a few more of the disappearing blocks that we saw back in Sheepman's level, and then a hallway of spikes. Jumping straight down the middle will hopefully allow you to miss all the spikes and you won't have to move at all. Keep firing straight ahead of you while you run down these hallways in order to hit the vehicles as they move across. Just be sure to get out of the way of their projectile fire as the other part of them flies up into the ceiling. Once you climb this ladder, watch out for another one of the giant robots before entering the actual final boss door for Dr. Wily Stage 1. Once again, you have 3 more of the robots with the old powers to deal with. This time, we have to deal with ones from Slash Man, Blizzard Man, and Tornado Man. For Tornado Man, when he comes down, he's going to launch his tornadoes up in the air just like he did back in Mega Man 9. He does 2 sets of these before he ends up jumping down into the middle and goes back into his holder. Try to do your best to get in between the tornadoes as they fly up. Slash Man can be a little bit more difficult. When he lands, fire a couple shots but then quickly get away to avoid his swipe. He then jumps and lands again, and whatever way you're facing him, he'll try to hit you again with the slash. For Blizzard Man, you'll have to jump over his large amount of ice that he throws at you. He throws about 4 of these out before he ends up retreating, but you can usually destroy him before he'll ever go back into his holder. Once you've defeated all 3 of them and drained their health bar, we move on to Dr. Wily Stage 2. At the beginning of Dr. Wily Stage 2, there's a conveyor belt in the middle that's right before the spikes that ends up having a lot of the little item replenishments, so if you use any of your weapons in the previous level, you can replenish it there. Watch out for this robot and do some short jumps in order to hit it. If it gets too close, keep firing at the shield in order to knock it back. I suggest staying on that conveyor belt on the top area and wait for the little jumping robot to go underneath, because if he ends up running into you, he'll end up causing you usually to back up and end up falling into the pit because of the conveyor belt. Up here, take out the robot by just standing on the giant ice block, then get out Rush Coil in order to launch yourself up to the ladder. When you get up here, you have 2 of the Snowman enemies to deal with, and then we have to do a rematch against the 2 Firebirds that we saw in Solar Man's level. The same strategy applies as the first time we battled with them. Keep firing at the one that's on the bottom area and dodge the fire that the top one ends up shooting out. When they end up switching places, you'll then change your fire to the next one that had came down. Once you take out one though, the other one that remains will of course be able to fire at the bottom and at the top. During this section, just take your time and go under the large pistons that come down when you have a great opportunity and the most amount of time to do so. These will of course kill you instantly if you end up getting crushed by one of them. Down here, use the Rush Coil if you need to replenish any of your health by grabbing the little health items in the top left corner, and then drop down here. It's time for a rematch against the giant light bulb robot that we saw in Sheepman's level. Charge it up, and then keep blasting at him by using the top square. If you have too much trouble dealing with both of the other little light bulbs, shoot one of them out, but leave one, because he can't respawn the one if there's still one alive. Drop down here and be very careful by either going on the left or right side, whatever path you choose, and watch out for the spikes along the way. Down here, take your time over the jumps and take out the cannons before trying to jump to the platform with them. Be careful here that you don't accidentally destroy all the ice blocks and you end up jumping on one that's already cracked and end up falling into the gap. Over here, take out the giant columns from below the robot, but don't destroy the robot itself. Instead, jump on top of him, and then jump over to the right in order to get up the ladder. Over here, get out the Rush Jet, and this will allow you to get to the center of the room a little bit easier than trying to make the jump straight over. Up here, we have another set of those large pistons. Once again, take your time and go when the best opportunity shows itself. After this piston though, you can really go past the next 2 pretty quickly as long as you're fast enough, and you won't have to sit around and wait, because it'll take a few seconds for them to finally fall down. When you make it over here, watch out for the giant robot before hitting the Dr. Wily door in time for another boss battle. To really have an easy time dealing with the giant crab robot, get out Blade Man's ability and start using it. This will allow you to hit both a claw and an eyeball with a projectile instead of just being able to hit one of them at a time. Do not fire at the claws when they're blocking the eyes because you'll just bounce off of them and you'll waste the shot. Keep bouncing along the platforms and be careful not to jump straight up and end up running your head into the spikes below the platforms. Once you're able to destroy the top set of the eyes and claws, work your way to the bottom and stand on the ground and take out the second set. Once you're able to destroy it, we move on to Dr. Wily Stage number 3. At the beginning of Dr. Wily Stage 3, watch out for these little guys that move across the platform. We've been seeing a lot of them, but there's a couple of them right here that can get a little bit annoying. Then, be very careful to watch out for the giant robot before entering the door. This platform can be moved by pressing either the left or right buttons, causing it to go, of course, left or right. I usually like to stay about here on the screen as it gives me a good vantage point in order to get past the Matools as well as avoid the spikes. While the Matools themselves really won't do too much damage to you, if one hits you and you end up getting caught underneath a set of spikes, it'll instantly kill you by getting squashed. Drop down into the water and watch out for the spikes along the walls. You'll have to move yourself a little bit over to the left in order to avoid them all. You then have to do the seesaw ability that we saw back in Blade Man's level. We're underwater, so you make a lot of really big jumps every time that you do a regular jump here, so watch out so you don't accidentally hit the spikes that are going to be coming up in a few seconds. I also recommend trying to take out the shrimp enemies as soon as they appear, because they can be quite annoying and end up knocking you back and cause you to land on the spikes. If you do get hit one and land on the spikes, be sure to jump up immediately, because you'll have a couple of seconds of invulnerability to get back on the platform before you end up losing your life. This little area can be very annoying, because when you climb up the ladder here, you have to jump to the small columns while also dealing with the Matool on top. While the Matool's projectiles don't hurt you, they cause you to slip and slide when you're trying to jump. You also have to be on pretty much the exact edge of the column when you jump in order to actually make it to the next one, and that includes also the ladder itself, which only has a little bit of area for you to grab onto. You can try to use the rush jet, but sometimes that'll just get in the way and cause you to run into one of the columns itself. If you fall down the middle though, be sure to hug the left wall so you end up running into the Matool, so it ends up hitting you, knocking you back into the spikes, and with your invulnerability you'll be able to get back on the safe land. As you can see here, I had a pretty difficult time while trying to deal with this area this time around. Once up here, take out the robot that mans the cannon, and the two spider enemies, as well as replenish your items that we used previously, mainly the Blade Man ability that we used against the previous boss. Once you grab the items, run into the door and we have another area where we'll have to be on the lift and control it with the buttons again. On this second elevator area, I usually like to stay about in the same spot I did on the first section. There is a little bit more spikes, so you will have to move the buttons a little bit more than you did on the first time around. Just be sure once again that if you end up getting hit by one of the Matools, it doesn't knock you back, so you end up landing underneath the spike as the elevator goes up. Once we reach the top, you'll enter this room with a lot of these little jumps close to the ceiling. Take out the Matool first, and try to do your best not to get hit by too many of the things that make you slide. If you end up getting hit by them, just keep jumping around and wait a few seconds for them to go away. To make this section real easy though, grab yourself the rush jet and ride across the top. If you need some extra health as well as an energy tank, use Commando Man's missiles in order to blow up the green walls. There's one up here and one on the next screen that you can blow up in order to collect the items. Once you go through the boss door, it's time for another boss battle, and it's this game's version of the Yellow Devil. Once again, I usually like to use Blade Man's ability or the Rebound Striker from Strike Man. Try to do your best to avoid the squares as they try to form in the middle in order to create the robot. As to be expected, you cannot hurt this thing until the core ends up getting into place. The core ends up rising from the bottom though and doesn't actually appear in the middle, so you can end up hitting it as it ends up rising up. It then moves up and down and fires some pretty powerful lasers at you. They're a little bit tricky to dodge, so if you end up getting hit, just try to do your best not to end up getting knocked back into one of the pits. If you can't defeat him fully before the core goes away, you'll have to do your best to avoid all the cubes and squares once again, and then you'll actually be able to attack the core as it'll actually appear at the bottom. Once it appears again, I usually like to use Blade Man's ability by jumping up in order to hit the last few times that I need in order to defeat it, and we can move on to Dr. Wily Stage 4. Dr. Wily Stage 4 is a staple of the Mega Man series. It's the Dr. Wily stage where we're going to have to go through a gauntlet and beat all the robot masters from the game one more time. So, before climbing up the ladder, be sure to grab as many of the item replenishments as you can in order to replenish your items that you were using in the previous stages. Once you grab them all, choose either the left or right ladder. I prefer choosing the left ladder as it's a little bit easier to dodge the enemies as you work your way up. On the left side you have those square eyeball enemies that after a few seconds their eyes open up and they end up flying across the screen. Just take your time as you move your way upwards so you don't end up getting run into by them and end up getting knocked off the ladder and end up falling back down a couple of screens. The other side not only has to deal with them a few times, you also have to deal with the flames coming out of the walls. Once you get to the top, you can get a big item replenishment and a big health replenishment if you need it before entering the chambers for the rematches. We're going to start off in the lower right chamber and do our rematch with Pump Man first. Get out Thunder Wool that we got from Sheep Man and throw it up into the air. The moves in this game work a little bit differently than you would expect. You're not going to try to hit them directly on. For Thunder Wool, you're going to shoot it up into the air, and after a few seconds a lightning bolt comes down, and that's what's actually going to hit Pump Man. You don't want to actually hit him with just the cloud itself. After he's done, we have our rematch against Strike Man. Thankfully, his weakness is Blade Man's ability, so get that out and start launching it at him. It does a lot of damage, so it won't take long to drain all his health, and we can move on to the next Robot Master. For Nitro Man, get out Chill Spikes in order to drop them on the ground and have him run into it when he's in his bike mode. That ends up doing at least a little bit more damage than hitting him directly and freezing him, though both strategies will end up doing the job and end up killing him. Chill Man once again can be a real pain just because of his pattern and the slippery floor. His weakness is the Solar Blaze move that we got from Solar Man. The thing about this move though is it actually ends up activating a few seconds after you shoot it out, so sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to actually hit Chill Man with them. And because Chill Man moves so fast, you'll end up getting frozen a lot of times when you're trying to dodge and trying to actually hit him with his weakness. Next up is Blade Man, and I'm going to tell you right now I end up messing up this battle pretty bad because his weakness is Commando Man's bomb ability. However, if you hit him directly on, it does very little damage. What you're supposed to do is launch out the Commando Man missile, have it explode against the wall, and the ripple effect that it gives off, that's what actually hurts Blade Man a lot. And because the timing on this can be a little bit strange as you're trying to dodge Blade Man's ability, it's usually just best to either get out the actual just Mega Buster, or just try to stay on one side of the wall and get your shots directly ready as he comes over. So in the end, after missing enough of the missiles, I'm just going to get out the regular Mega Buster and finish him off the same way I did the first time I fought him. Next up is Solar Man. Now, Solar Man was a real pain the first time we fought him, but thankfully his weakness, the Pump Shield, helps tremendously and takes him out really fast. So get out that Water Shield and start using it immediately against him. As you can see, each little bubble does a ton of damage, and it'll only take one or two of the shields overall to fully drain his health. Next up is Sheep Man. Now, Sheep Man's weakness is the Rebound Striker, which does a good amount of damage to him, but the problem with it is, when he's up in the air using his Cloud ability, it's really hard to actually hit him. You can hit Sheep Man while he's staying in his Cloud, but of course you have to hit the Cloud that he's actually in, and not one of the decoys. And because Rebound Striker actually costs a good amount of item energy, it can be hard sometimes to actually kill Sheep Man with just the Rebound Striker. I usually end up running out of it before I finish him off. And that leaves only one Robot Master left, and that's Commando Man. His weakness is the Nitro Man wheel that we can use against him. The only thing about it is you have to be really close to hit him directly with it, so watch out when he ends up landing, jump up in the air and try to hit him that way, so you don't end up getting shooken up while he hits the ground with his big ground pound. But it doesn't take too many of the wheel cutter to actually kill him. Once they're all defeated, jump in the center for the real boss of Wily Stage 4. The giant pirate skull ship starts off by shooting big missiles at you. You have to jump on the big missiles and then jump up and actually hit the skull directly on. Usually during this battle, I like to use Solar Blaze, and since I used a good amount of it earlier on against Chill Man, this is one of those times where a weapon tank definitely comes in handy. Jump on the missiles and try to do your best to avoid the little missiles as they shoot out. The giant missiles hitting you directly on does a lot of damage to you. Once you take out the first form of it though, he ends up breaking off and ends up having a second form. This weakness is the Water Shield from Pump Man. Watch out for the large blast that he shoots directly at you trying to hit you, and then after 4 of them, he'll end up lowering himself, and that's when you actually can do damage to him. Stay directly underneath Dr. Wily's chamber when he comes down, because he ends up using a lightning move that will end up running across the screen, and the only place you're going to be safe is directly under Wily himself. If you end up using all your Water Shield, it's once again good to use a weapon tank or a mystery tank if you have it to completely replenish your health and item. While I probably could still defeat him without using the energy tank, I'm gonna use one here just to make sure I don't end up getting hit and end up losing a life at this point. After you destroy the vehicle, Dr. Wily blasts off in his UFO, and he ends up rising to another stage, so our battle isn't quite over yet. Dr. Wily Stage number 5 is pretty unique. We're up in space, so there's a lot of anti-gravity going on, so it's pretty much like jumping underwater. Also, the whole space station itself is upside down, so all the items are technically on the ceiling when you're walking across the ground here. Most of the level is made up of the large amounts of drills that come out of the ceiling and ground and keep moving through, and there's a lot of them, and you can end up taking a lot of damage done to yourself by running into them. If you still have any of the water shield, that's a good item to use in order to take out some of the drills as you make your way through. Here you have the choice of going down one of two ladders. I definitely suggest taking the right ladder, because being on the top portion here, you have a lot more space in order to dodge the drills of the second area. When you drop down here, you can grab yourself an energy tank and a mystery tank if you want to try to get it on the far left side, before dropping down to the final boss battle of the game. Just like many of Dr. Wily's past forms, you have to battle him in his little UFO. Now this time he has himself as well as a clone, and if you accidentally hit the clone one instead of him, it ends up attacking you and hurting you a lot more. The best way to deal with this battle is using the chill spikes. You have the anti-gravity going on, so that gives you a little bit of an advantage when dodging some of the moves, but at the same time it's also a disadvantage because when you move slower, it's harder sometimes to get away from the shots it throws out. Try to do your best when he shoots out the green beam and it ends up going across the top, launching shots straight down, that you can stand in between two of the shots. But when he does that move, it's a great opportunity though to end up getting a lot of easy shots in on the spaceship as it stays still for a good amount of time. Once you're able to defeat Dr. Wily, you can sit back and enjoy the ending to Mega Man 10. While Mega Man 10 may not be the most memorable game in the classic Mega Man series, it was definitely another fine outing by Capcom. And while some may have seen Mega Man 10 as Capcom trying to milk the retro cow dry here, I still find it extremely fun to play, and I would end up playing another Mega Man game if they put another retro one out. But at least for now, this is the final game in the classic Mega Man series. As the credits wrap up, we get to see a shot of the planet Earth and our produced by Capcom screen. And with that, that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.